Whispers in the Bone Dust. The opening sequence plunges viewers into the sterile fluorescent hell of a paleontology lab at 3 a.m., where Dr. Elena Vasquez makes a discovery that will shatter everything we thought we knew about human evolution. Her trembling hands hold fragments of a skull that carbon dates to 400,000 years ago, but the cranial capacity suggests intelligence that shouldn't have existed for another 300,000 years. The bone whispers secrets that science refuses to hear. Secrets that suggest our ancestors weren't alone in their climb toward consciousness. As she turns the fragment in the harsh light, shadows dance across its surface like the ghosts of memories that predate civilization itself. The lab equipment hums with an ominous frequency, and somewhere in the darkness beyond the fluorescent tubes, something ancient seems to be watching, waiting for humanity to finally understand the horrifying truth about its own origins. The chapter, it establishes the documentary's central mystery through visceral, intimate cinematography that transforms scientific discovery into cosmic horror. We see Elena's face reflected in the bone's polished surface, her modern features superimposed over something that challenges the very timeline of human evolution. The camera work is claustrophobic, focusing on minute details: the texture of ancient bone, the tremor in scholarly hands, the way dust motes dance like spirits in the sterile air. Sound design amplifies every scrape of bone against metal, every whispered breath, creating an atmosphere where scientific revelation feels like summoning something that should have remained buried. The lighting shifts subtly throughout the sequence, beginning with harsh institutional fluorescence but gradually warming to something more primal, more organic, as if the very presence of this anomalous fossil is awakening something prehistoric. In the modern world, this opening serves as our gateway into a narrative that treats human evolution not as a triumphant march toward enlightenment, but as a horror story written in calcium and carbon, where each fossil discovery reveals another layer of impossible truth. Elena becomes our guide into this nightmare, her scientific rationality slowly eroding as she confronts evidence that suggests humanity's rise was neither natural nor inevitable. The bone fragment serves as both artifact and omen, a physical manifestation of the documentary's central thesis, that somewhere in our distant past, something went terribly wrong or terribly right, and the species we've become was never supposed to exist at all. The chapter concludes with Elena placing the fragment under a microscope, and as the camera zooms into the bone's microscopic structure, we see patterns that seem almost deliberately arranged, as if intelligence itself has been encoded into the very calcium matrix of our ancestors' remains. The patterns pulse with an otherworldly rhythm, suggesting that what we're looking at isn't just fossilized bone but some form of prehistoric technology that uses organic matter as its medium, a technology that has been waiting patiently for someone with the right knowledge to activate it once again. The laboratory becomes a character in its own right, with vintage equipment that predates modern safety protocols and fluorescent lights that flicker with temporal irregularity, creating an atmosphere where past and present bleed together in unsettling ways. Elena's research notes begin to write themselves, filled with sketches of bone structures that she doesn't remember drawing, technical diagrams that demonstrate understanding of anatomy she's never studied, and calculations that solve equations she never posed. The bone fragment seems to exert a gravitational pull on both physical objects and human consciousness, drawing Elena deeper into research that feels less like discovery and more like remembering something she once knew but deliberately forgot. As she works through the night, her reflection in the bone's surface begins to change, showing features that don't match her own. Faces that belong to individuals who lived and died hundreds of thousands of years before her birth but who somehow share her exact genetic markers and her obsession with uncovering truths that science insists cannot exist. The microscopic analysis reveals that the bone fragment contains organic compounds that shouldn't be able to survive the fossilization process, compounds that appear to be actively maintaining their molecular structure through unknown biochemical processes that continue to operate after hundreds of thousands of years of burial. The compounds show signs of artificial enhancement and modification that suggest they were deliberately introduced into the bone structure during the life of the individual, creating a form of biological preservation technology that could maintain specific molecular configurations indefinitely. Elena's analysis reveals that the compounds are not randomly distributed but form complex, geometric patterns that correspond to mathematical sequences that wouldn't be discovered by human mathematics for another 300,000 years, suggesting that the bone fragment contains encoded information that was deliberately preserved for future discovery by entities that understood mathematical principles far beyond the capabilities of early human populations. The horror deepens as Elena realizes that the bone fragment isn't unique. Similar patterns appear in fossil remains from archaeological sites around the world, all dating to the same general period and all containing identical molecular signatures that suggest they were created using the same biotechnology. The global distribution of these anomalous fossils indicates that whatever entity or process was responsible for their creation was operating on a planetary scale, with the technological capability to modify human populations across multiple continents simultaneously. Elena's research reveals that the bone fragments are components of a larger information storage and transmission system that spans thousands of years in multiple species, suggesting that what we interpret as natural evolutionary processes might actually be evidence of systematic biological engineering that was designed to guide and control the development of life on Earth according to specifications that served purposes we can't comprehend. As Elena delves deeper into her analysis, she begins to experience physical and psychological changes that mirror the anomalies she's discovering in the bone fragments. Her own brain scans show the development of new neural pathways that correspond to the patterns encoded in the fossil remains, suggesting that exposure to the anomalous compounds is triggering genetic changes that are activating dormant capabilities that exist in modern human DNA. Elena's transformation becomes a mirror of the prehistoric modification she's studying, forcing her to confront the possibility that she isn't just discovering evidence of ancient biotechnology, but becoming part of a process that has been operating continuously for hundreds of thousands of years, waiting for the right individual with the right genetic markers to continue work that was begun by entities that understood human development far better than humans understand themselves. The chapter culminates with Elena's realization that her discovery of the bone fragment wasn't accidental. The anomalous fossils were designed to be discovered by specific individuals at specific times, and her research is part of a predetermined sequence of events that was set in motion hundreds of thousands of years ago by entities that understood temporal causality and could engineer discoveries that would occur at precisely the right moments to serve their long-term objectives. Elena's final transformation reveals that the boundary between researcher and research subject has dissolved, and that her investigation of prehistoric biotechnology has made her a component of the very system she was trying to understand, suggesting that what we call scientific discovery might actually be a form of recruitment into processes that operate according to principles that transcend human understanding of time, causality, and identity. The impossible hunt is deep in the Olduvai Gorge, where the African sun beats down mercilessly on layers of sedimentary time. Archaeologist Dr. Marcus Chen unearths stone tools that challenge everything we understand about early human cognitive development. These aren't the crude choppers and scrapers that textbooks tell us characterized Homo habilis. These are sophisticated implements that demonstrate planning, abstract thinking, and technological innovation that shouldn't have emerged for hundreds of thousands of years. The tools are arranged in patterns around ancient hearths, suggesting ritual behavior and symbolic thinking among creatures we've always assumed were barely above the level of clever apes. But it's not just their sophistication that disturbs, it's their placement, their purpose, and the way they seem designed not for hunting game, but for hunting something else entirely. The camera follows Chen as he carefully excavates each tool, his weathered hands revealing implements that grow progressively more unsettling with each discovery. There are blades with serrated edges that serve no practical purpose for processing plant matter or animal flesh, their design suggesting they were meant to cut through something far more resilient. Spear points show wear patterns inconsistent with hunting traditional prey. The microscopic analysis reveals they were used against creatures with hide thickness and bone density that doesn't match any known African megafauna from the period. Most disturbing are the curved implements, almost surgical in their precision, that seem designed for a very specific anatomical purpose that no paleontologist dares to voice aloud. The surrounding sediment yields bone fragments that don't match any species in the fossil record. Fragments that suggest our early ancestors weren't just hunting animals, they were hunting something that looked remarkably like themselves. The horror deepens as Chen's team reconstructs the site's stratigraphy, revealing that these impossible tools appear suddenly in the archaeological record, with no evolutionary precedent or gradual development. One layer shows typical primitive stone knapping techniques, and then immediately above it, tools of such sophistication that they seem to represent a quantum leap in cognitive ability. The team's computer modeling suggests that such rapid technological advancement would require either direct instruction from a more advanced species or access to knowledge that existed outside the normal boundaries of trial and error learning. Night falls over the dig site, and in the dancing shadows cast by the worklights, the ancient tools seem to gleam with malevolent purpose, as if they are eager to fulfill their original function once again. Chen's growing obsession with the site manifests in increasingly disturbed behavior. He begins working alone at night, illuminated only by flickering oil lamps that cast prehistoric shadows across his face as he handles the ancient implements with reverent familiarity. His field notes become increasingly illegible, filled with sketches that don't match any known archaeological convention drawings that seem to show the tools in use, depicting scenes of violence and ritualistic behavior that makes his colleagues deeply uncomfortable. The chapter climaxes with Chen's realization that the tool arrangement isn't random, it forms a pattern. A message left by ancestors who wanted future generations to understand that their evolution wasn't natural, that they had been shaped by forces beyond their comprehension, and that the sophisticated tools they created were weapons in a war against something that threatened to reclaim what it had given them. The excavation reveals evidence of systematic weapon testing and refinement, with discarded prototypes that, to show incremental improvements in design efficiency that suggest the tools were developed through systematic research and development rather than accidental discovery. Chemical analysis of tool surfaces reveals trace elements that don't occur naturally in the region, indicating that the stone materials were transported from distant locations specifically for weapon manufacturing, requiring coordination and planning that demonstrates organizational abilities far beyond what early hominins should have possessed. The weapon designs show evidence of understanding biomechanics and metallurgy that wouldn't be formally developed for hundreds of thousands of years, with stone implements that demonstrate principles of leverage, cutting efficiency, and structural integrity that rival modern engineering techniques. The most disturbing discovery comes with the realization that the weapons weren't designed for defense against predators or competition with other early human groups. They were specifically engineered to penetrate and damage anatomical structures that match modern human physiology, rather than the anatomy of any known prehistoric species. The weapons show evidence of testing against targets that possessed cranial thickness, bone density, and tissue composition that corresponds to modern Homo sapiens rather than contemporary hominins, suggesting that early humans were developing weapons to fight against something that hadn't evolved yet, or something that had traveled backward through time to threaten their existence. Chen's final revelation comes when he discovers that similar weapon caches exist at early human sites across Africa, all showing identical design principles and manufacturing techniques, despite being separated by thousands of miles, indicating that early human populations were coordinating their weapon development in response to a threat that required sophisticated military planning and technological innovation to survive. The weapon manufacturing sites reveal evidence of systematic training and combat preparation that included the development of specialized fighting techniques, designed specifically for combat against opponents with advanced technological capabilities and superior physical attributes. The archaeological evidence suggests that early human populations developed coordinated military strategies that involve multiple generations of preparation and training, with weapon designs that were continuously refined and improved based on combat experience against enemies that possessed capabilities far beyond those of any known prehistoric species. The training sites contain evidence of systematic practice in combat techniques that were designed to exploit specific anatomical weaknesses in opponents whose physiology matched that of modern humans rather than contemporary early hominins. Chen's analysis reveals that the weapon development program wasn't limited to stone tools. The sites contain evidence of biological and chemical weapons that were designed to exploit specific physiological vulnerabilities in targets whose biology was identical to modern human physiology. The biological weapons included toxins that were specifically formulated to target genetic markers that appear in modern human DNA but were supposedly absent from early hominin populations, suggesting that early humans were developing weapons to fight against enemies whose genetics were identical to modern human genetics. Despite the fact that modern humans weren't supposed to exist for hundreds of thousands of years, the chemical weapons demonstrate understanding of biochemistry and toxicology that required knowledge of human physiology that wouldn't be formally understood until the development of modern medicine. The horror reaches its peak when Chen realizes that the weapon development sites contain evidence of systematic intelligence gathering and reconnaissance activities that were designed to study and analyze the capabilities, weaknesses, and behavioral patterns of enemies that possessed technology and organizational capabilities far superior to those of early human populations. The intelligence gathering evidence suggests that early humans were conducting systematic surveillance and infiltration operations against adversaries who possessed advanced technological capabilities, indicating that what we interpret as primitive early human behavior was actually sophisticated military resistance against technologically superior enemies who were attempting to control or eliminate early human populations. Chen's final discovery reveals that the weapon development program was part of a larger resistance movement that involved coordination between early human populations and other entities that were opposed to the technological control systems that were being implemented by the enemies that early humans were fighting, suggesting that human evolution occurred within the context of a prehistoric technological war that involved multiple species and entities with capabilities that far exceeded anything in the conventional archaeological record. The weapons cache contains implements that demonstrate understanding of advanced physics and engineering principles that enabled early humans to create devices that could disrupt and disable technological systems that operated according to principles that wouldn't be understood by human science for hundreds of thousands of years. The technological disruption weapon suggests that early humans understood the vulnerabilities of advanced technological systems and could create countermeasures that were specifically designed to neutralize threats that possessed capabilities far beyond early human technological development. The weapons show evidence of systematic testing and refinement that was based on detailed understanding of the operational principles of the technological systems they were designed to defeat. Chen's analysis of the weapon testing sites reveals that early humans conducted systematic experimental programs that involved capturing and analyzing technological artifacts from their enemies. Reverse engineering captured technology to understand its operational principles and developing countermeasures that could exploit specific vulnerabilities in advanced technological systems. The reverse engineering evidence suggests that early humans possessed intellectual capabilities and technical knowledge that far exceeded what their apparent primitive lifestyle would suggest, indicating that what we interpret as early human primitive behavior was actually a sophisticated camouflage strategy designed to conceal advanced technical capabilities from enemies who might have eliminated early human populations if they had understood the true extent of early human technological development. Children of the Uncanny Valley in a climate-controlled vault beneath the Natural History Museum in London. Dr. Sarah Morrison confronts a collection of Neanderthal remains that tells a story more terrifying than Extinction. It tells a story of replacement. The bones, excavated from sites across Europe, reveal a pattern of trauma and modification that suggests our cousins didn't simply die out due to climate change or resource competition. They were systematically hunted, processed, and in some cases, consumed by early Homo sapiens in what can only be described as a prehistoric genocide of unprecedented efficiency. But the most disturbing aspect isn't the evidence of violence, it's the evidence of deliberate genetic manipulation that preceded the slaughter. Morrison's analysis of dental remains reveals isotopic signatures that don't match any known dietary patterns from the period. The bone composition suggests these Neanderthals had been consuming plants and minerals that don't exist in European flora, substances that seem to have been artificially introduced into their diet over generations. X-ray analysis of their skulls shows cranial modifications that appear surgical in nature. Perfectly circular holes drilled with precision that wouldn't be matched by human technology for another 40,000 years. These trepanation marks aren't evidence of primitive medical practice. They're evidence of systematic experimentation, as if someone or something had been using Neanderthal populations as test subjects for procedures that served purposes beyond their understanding. The genetic analysis yields results that Morrison's colleagues refused to publish. Results that suggest Neanderthal DNA had been deliberately altered to enhance certain cognitive functions while suppressing others. Their brains had been modified to increase spatial reasoning and technical skills, while diminishing social cognition and tribal bonding, creating a population of highly capable but isolated individuals who couldn't form the cooperative networks necessary for survival against more socially cohesive human groups. The modifications appear to have been generational, affecting reproductive cells in ways that ensured the changes would be passed down to offspring, creating a subspecies that was simultaneously more advanced and more vulnerable than their natural state would have allowed. Morrison's reconstruction of Neanderthal society reveals communities that had achieved technological sophistication far beyond what the archaeological record typically suggests. They had developed metallurgy, complex mathematics, and possibly even written language. But their enhanced capabilities came at a terrible cost. They had lost the ability to recognize threat from their human cousins, their modified brains interpreting aggressive behavior as benign social interaction, right up until the moment of their destruction. The vault's fluorescent lights flicker as Morrison examines jawbones that show filing marks, deliberate modification of teeth into shapes that served no survival function but rather marked their bearers as something other than natural. The chapter concludes with Morrison's horrifying realization that the same genetic markers found in modified Neanderthal remains also appear in modern human DNA, suggesting that whatever force shaped our extinct cousins had also left its mark on the species that replaced them, and that the line between predator and prey in humanity's evolutionary history is far more blurred than anyone wants to acknowledge. The Neanderthal remains show evidence of systematic breeding programs that created distinct subspecies with enhanced capabilities for specific functions. Some showed modifications that enhanced manual dexterity and tool-making abilities, while others demonstrated genetic changes that improved memory and pattern recognition beyond normal human parameters. The breeding programs appear to have been coordinated across multiple geographic regions, with genetic markers indicating that modified Neanderthal populations were deliberately relocated and interbred to create hybrid individuals with combinations of enhanced abilities that served purposes that remain unclear. Chemical analysis of bone composition reveals that modified Neanderthals were consuming synthetic nutrients that don't occur in nature, suggesting that their enhanced capabilities required artificial dietary supplements that were provided by the entities responsible for their genetic modification. The most horrifying discovery comes with Morrison's realization that Neanderthal genetic modification wasn't limited to cognitive enhancements. Some populations show evidence of physiological changes that enhance their utility as biological resources for harvesting specific organs, tissues, and genetic material. Modified Neanderthal remains show enlarged organs, enhanced bone density, and tissue composition that suggests they were being bred as biological factories for producing materials that could be harvested and utilized by other species. The modifications appear to have made Neanderthals physiologically dependent on continued genetic maintenance, requiring regular interventions from their creators to maintain their enhanced capabilities, which explains why Neanderthal populations collapsed so quickly when these interventions ceased. Morrison's analysis reveals that Neanderthal extinction wasn't natural selection but systematic termination of a genetic engineering project that had served its purpose and was no longer needed by the entities that had created and maintained modified Neanderthal populations for thousands of years. The breeding programs demonstrate understanding of genetics and heredity that required knowledge of DNA, structure, and genetic expression that wouldn't be formally understood until the mid-20th century, with evidence of precise genetic modifications that could enhance specific characteristics while suppressing others according to detailed specifications that served. Morrison's analysis reveals that the genetic modification technology used on Neanderthal populations wasn't limited to individual enhancement. It included the development of biological interfaces that could connect modified individuals to technological systems that operated according to principles that remain unknown. The biological interfaces appear to have allowed modified Neanderthals to serve as components within larger technological systems, with genetic modifications that enabled them to interface directly with technologies that required biological compatibility for optimal operation. The interface technology suggests that modified Neanderthals were being prepared to serve specific functions within technological systems that required biological components with capabilities that exceeded those of unmodified humans. The horror deepens with Morrison's discovery that the genetic modification technology included memory and consciousness, manipulation techniques that could alter individual personality and behavior according to predetermined specifications, creating modified Neanderthals who possessed enhanced capabilities but whose consciousness and identity had been systematically altered to ensure compliance with the objectives of their creators. The consciousness modification technology appears to have been integrated with the genetic enhancement systems, creating individuals who possessed superior capabilities but whose autonomy and independent thought had been systematically eliminated. Morrison's analysis suggests that modified Neanderthals were essentially biological machines that retained the appearance and basic functionality of natural hominins while serving purposes that were determined entirely by their creators. The final revelation comes with Morrison's realization that the technology used for Neanderthal modification wasn't abandoned after their extinction. Identical genetic markers appear in modern human populations, suggesting that the same genetic engineering techniques that were used to create and control modified Neanderthal populations are currently being used to modify modern human genetics, according to specifications that serve purposes that remain hidden from the general population. Morrison's genetic analysis reveals that modern humans carry dormant genetic modifications that can be activated under specific conditions, indicating that what we consider natural human genetics actually includes artificial enhancements and control systems that were implemented by the same entities that created and destroyed modified Neanderthal populations. The discovery suggests that modern humans are themselves products of ongoing genetic engineering projects that have been operating continuously for hundreds of thousands of years, with genetic modifications that remain dormant until they are activated by entities that possess the technological capability to control modern human development, according to specifications that serve their long-term objectives. The flesh makers beneath the permafrost of Siberian tundra, where temperatures preserve organic matter in states of suspended animation. Dr. Yuki Tanaka's expedition uncovers evidence of early human settlements that challenge fundamental assumptions about our ancestors' relationship with their own mortality. The site, dating to approximately 200,000 years ago, contains not just the typical detritus of early human habitation fire pits, stone tools, and food remains, but also the unmistakable evidence of systematic body modification and what can only be described as prehistoric biotechnology. Frozen in the ancient permafrost are organic structures that appear to be cultivated rather than hunted. Tissue samples that suggest our ancestors weren't just using their environment to survive, but actively reshaping both their and themselves in ways that modern science struggles to explain. The excavation reveals chambers carved deep into the frozen earth, lined with what appears to be cultivated organic matter that forms complex geometric patterns along the walls. Chemical analysis of these biological formations reveals proteins and genetic material that don't match any known species from the period, suggesting that early humans had somehow learned to cultivate and modify living tissue for purposes that remain unclear. The formations show signs of deliberate cultivation over multiple generations, requiring knowledge of biological processes that wouldn't be formally understood for another 190,000 years. Most disturbing are the human remains found within these chambers, bodies that show extensive modification during life, with bone structures that have been deliberately reshaped, and tissue that appears to have been grafted or grown rather than naturally developed. Naka's team discovers evidence of surgical procedures that demonstrate intimate knowledge of human anatomy and physiology far beyond what should have been possible for early Homo sapiens. The bodies show signs of organ transplantation, limb extension, and cranial modification that required not just primitive surgery but actual biological engineering. Genetic analysis reveals that these modified individuals carried DNA sequences that don't appear in modern human genomes, markers that suggest deliberate genetic manipulation using techniques that parallel modern biotechnology. The modifications appear to have been designed to enhance specific capabilities: increased lung capacity for high-altitude survival, modified digestive systems for processing otherwise toxic plants, and neurological enhancements that would have dramatically increased cognitive processing speed. The horror deepens as the team realizes that these modification chambers weren't isolated experiments but part of a network that extended across vast geographic regions, suggesting a coordinated effort to reshape human biology on a species-wide scale. Radiocarbon dating of organic samples from similar sites across Asia and Europe reveals that this prehistoric biotechnology was being practiced simultaneously across continents, implying either rapid cultural transmission that defies known migration patterns or coordination by entities that existed outside normal human social structures. The modified bodies show no signs of rejection or surgical trauma, suggesting that the procedures were performed with the voluntary cooperation of the subjects, who somehow understood that their modifications served a purpose greater than individual survival. Tanaka's final discovery, a preserved brain that shows artificial neural pathways grown from non-human genetic material, forces her to confront the possibility that what we call human evolution might have been directed evolution, guided by intelligence that understood biological manipulation in ways that make modern genetic engineering look primitive. By comparison, the biological modifications discovered at the site demonstrate understanding of regenerative medicine and tissue engineering that surpasses current medical capabilities, with evidence of limb regrowth, organ cultivation, and neural pathway reconstruction that was performed using techniques that required intimate knowledge of cellular biology and genetic expression. The modified individuals show evidence of enhanced healing abilities, disease resistance, and longevity that would have provided enormous survival advantages. But the modifications came at a cost. They appear to have been physiologically dependent on continued biotechnological maintenance that required sophisticated equipment and technical knowledge. The site contains evidence of biological manufacturing facilities that could produce synthetic organs, cultivate replacement tissues, and create hybrid organisms that combine human and non-human genetic material in ways that produced capabilities that exceeded the limitations of natural human biology. The most unsettling discovery comes with the realization that the biotechnology wasn't limited to human modification. The site contains evidence of systematic ecosystem engineering that involved creating modified plants and animals that served specific functions within a managed biological system that encompassed entire geographic regions. The modified organisms show evidence of genetic programming that allowed them to perform environmental maintenance functions, resource production, and biological recycling that maintained ecological balance in ways that wouldn't be understood by formal ecology for hundreds of thousands of years. Tanaka's analysis reveals that the prehistoric biotechnology was designed to create self-maintaining biological systems that could operate independently for thousands of years without direct supervision, suggesting that the entities responsible for these modifications understood long-term environmental management and biological engineering on a planetary scale. The final revelation comes with the discovery that similar biotechnology sites exist across the globe, all showing identical modification techniques and genetic markers, indicating that prehistoric biological engineering was part of a coordinated, global project that was designed to reshape life on Earth according to specifications that served purposes that remain hidden but were clearly beyond the scope of human survival or advancement. The biotechnology systems reveal evidence of sophisticated understanding of genetic expression and cellular programming that enabled the creation of living organisms that could perform specific technological functions while maintaining biological viability and reproductive capability. The modified organisms show evidence of genetic programming that allowed them to produce specific chemical compounds, perform environmental monitoring functions, and serve as biological components within larger technological systems that integrated living and non-living elements in ways that transcended conventional distinctions between biology and technology. The biological programming appears to have been designed to create organisms that could adapt and evolve according to predetermined specifications while maintaining their utility as technological components. Tanaka's analysis reveals that the biotechnology included the development of biological communication and control systems that could coordinate the activities of modified organisms across vast geographic regions using biological signaling mechanisms that operated according to principles that remain unknown to modern science. The communication systems appear to have enabled modified organisms to share information, coordinate activities, and respond to environmental changes in ways that created collective intelligence networks that spanned entire ecosystems. The biological control systems demonstrate understanding of neurobiology and behavioral modification that could alter the behavior and decision-making processes of modified organisms according to specifications that served the objectives of the technological systems they were designed to support. The most horrifying discovery comes with Tanaka's realization that the biotechnology included the development of consciousness transfer and preservation systems that could extract, store, and transfer individual consciousness between different biological hosts, creating a form of technological immortality that operated using biological rather than mechanical technologies. The consciousness transfer technology appears to have been integrated with the genetic modification systems, creating modified organisms that were specifically designed to serve as hosts for transferred consciousness while providing enhanced capabilities that exceeded those of natural biological systems. The consciousness preservation technology suggests that the entities responsible for prehistoric biotechnology possessed understanding of consciousness and identity that enabled them to manipulate and preserve individual awareness in ways that transcended the limitations of individual biological existence. The biotechnology systems demonstrate understanding of temporal manipulation and biological time control that enabled modified organisms to operate according to different temporal frameworks than natural biological systems, with evidence of biological processes that could accelerate, decelerate, or reverse according to predetermined specifications. The temporal manipulation technology appears to have been used to create biological systems that could operate across multiple timescales simultaneously, with some functions operating according to normal biological time while others operated according to accelerated or extended temporal frameworks that enabled long-term planning and coordination across thousands of years. Tanaka's analysis suggests that the prehistoric biotechnology was designed to create biological systems that could maintain their functionality and continue their development across temporal scales that far exceeded the lifespan of individual organisms or even entire species. The final revelation comes with Tanaka's discovery that the biotechnology systems included self-replication and evolution, mechanisms that could create new versions of the original technological systems using biological rather than mechanical reproduction, ensuring that the technological capabilities would continue to develop and spread even if the original creators were no longer available to maintain and control the systems. The self-replicating biotechnology appears to have been designed to continue its development and expansion according to predetermined objectives, while adapting to changing environmental conditions and incorporating new biological and technological capabilities as they became available. The discovery suggests that prehistoric biotechnology systems may still be operating in modern ecosystems, continuing their development and expansion according to programming that was established hundreds of thousands of years ago by entities whose objectives and capabilities remain unknown but whose influence on the development of life on Earth continues to operate according to specifications that transcend human understanding or control. Songs in Stonehigh in the limestone caves of France's Dordogne region, where prehistoric humans once sought shelter from Ice Age storms. Dr. Antoine Dubois discovers acoustic anomalies that transform our understanding of early human behavior from mere survival to something approaching technological sophistication. The cave paintings, traditionally interpreted as simple artistic expression or hunting magic, reveal themselves under acoustic analysis to be components of a complex sound system that transforms the natural cave formations into prehistoric resonance chambers. The paintings aren't just art, they're precise acoustic maps that guide sound waves through limestone passages and patterns that create specific auditory experiences, suggesting that our ancestors understood physics and engineering principles that wouldn't be formally recognized for tens of thousands of years. Dubois's acoustic measurements reveal that the cave system has been deliberately modified to amplify and direct sound in ways that create immersive auditory environments. Carved channels in the limestone walls follow mathematical patterns that optimize acoustic reflection, while strategically placed stone formations create resonance points that can produce sounds ranging from subsonic frequencies that induce altered states of consciousness to ultrasonic emissions that affect neurological function. The cave paintings themselves are positioned at nodes where specific sound frequencies converge, creating visual experiences that are enhanced and modified by accompanying audio phenomena. When Dubois recreates the acoustic conditions using period instruments, the combination of sound and visual elements creates sensory experiences that are simultaneously beautiful and deeply disturbing. The acoustic analysis reveals that different chambers within the cave system were designed to produce different psychological effects through sound manipulation. One chamber generates infrasonic frequencies that induce feelings of unease and paranoia, while another produces harmonic resonances that create euphoric states resembling religious ecstasy. The precision required to engineer such effects suggests that prehistoric humans possessed not only advanced understanding of acoustic physics but also detailed knowledge of how specific sound frequencies affect human consciousness and behavior. The cave system appears to have been designed as a kind of prehistoric technology for manipulating mental states, possibly for ritualistic purposes or as a method of social control that relied on acoustic rather than chemical means. The most disturbing discovery comes when Dubois analyzes the organic compounds found in paint pigments used for the cave art. Spectroscopic analysis reveals that the pigments contain trace amounts of neurotropic substances that become airborne when exposed to specific sound frequencies, creating a system where acoustic activation releases psychoactive compounds that enhance the audiovisual experience. The caves were designed as integrated technologies that combined acoustic engineering, biochemistry, and visual art to create immersive experiences that could alter consciousness in ways that approach modern virtual reality technology. The sophistication of this prehistoric system suggests that early humans didn't just stumble upon these effects through trial and error. They were following technical knowledge that implies either rapid cognitive evolution or instruction from sources that possessed advanced understanding of neuroscience and physics. Dubois's final revelation that similar acoustic modifications appear in cave sites across multiple continents, all dating to the same general period, suggests that this prehistoric technology wasn't an isolated innovation, but part of a coordinated effort to establish acoustic control systems across the early human world. The acoustic systems demonstrate understanding of harmonic resonance and frequency modulation that required mathematical knowledge, equivalent to modern audio engineering, with cave modifications that show evidence of precise calculations and systematic testing to achieve optimal acoustic effects. The cave paintings include technical diagrams that illustrate sound wave propagation and acoustic engineering principles, suggesting that prehistoric humans possessed theoretical knowledge of physics that supported their practical acoustic technologies. Chemical analysis of limestone modifications reveals that the caves were artificially aged using techniques that accelerated natural geological processes to create specific acoustic properties that wouldn't have developed naturally for thousands of years. The acoustic technologies weren't limited to consciousness manipulation. Dubois discovers evidence that the cave systems were designed to communicate across vast distances using acoustic transmission techniques that could send coded messages through underground limestone networks that connected cave systems across entire continents. The acoustic communication system appears to have operated continuously for thousands of years, allowing prehistoric human populations to coordinate activities and share information across geographic distances that wouldn't be bridged by formal communication technologies until the development of modern telecommunications. The cave systems contain evidence of acoustic recording and playback technologies that could preserve and transmit complex information using sound patterns that were encoded in limestone formations and could be activated by individuals who understood the acoustic principles involved. Dubois's analysis reveals that the prehistoric acoustic network was designed to operate as a backup communication system that would remain functional even if primary technological systems failed, suggesting that early humans understood the importance of redundant communication technologies and were preparing for scenarios that might disrupt their primary technological capabilities. The acoustic systems include evidence of sound-based manufacturing and material processing technologies that used specific frequencies and harmonic patterns to modify the molecular structure of stone, metal, and organic materials in ways that enhanced their properties and enabled the creation of materials with capabilities that exceeded those of naturally occurring substances. The acoustic manufacturing technologies appear to have been used to create tools, weapons, and architectural elements that possessed enhanced strength, durability, and functionality that was achieved through sound-based molecular modification, rather than mechanical processing. The acoustic material processing techniques demonstrate understanding of molecular physics and material science that wouldn't be formally understood until the development of modern materials engineering. Dubois's analysis reveals that the acoustic technologies included consciousness manipulation and memory modification systems that could alter individual consciousness and implant specific memories using sound frequencies that operated directly on neural tissue to modify brain function according to predetermined specifications. The consciousness manipulation systems appear to have been used to create modified individuals with enhanced capabilities and altered behavior patterns that served specific functions within prehistoric social and technological systems. The memory modification technologies demonstrate understanding of neurobiology and consciousness that enabled prehistoric humans to manipulate individual identity and personality according to specifications that served the objectives of larger social and technological control systems. The most horrifying discovery comes with Dubois's realization that the acoustic technologies included temporal manipulation capabilities that could alter the flow of time within specific geographic regions, using sound frequencies that operated according to principles that remain unknown to modern physics. The temporal manipulation systems appear to have been used to create temporal anomalies that allowed prehistoric humans to access future knowledge and coordinate activities across different time periods, enabling long-term planning and technological development that transcended the limitations of normal temporal causality. The temporal acoustic technologies suggest that prehistoric humans possessed understanding of time and causality that enabled them to manipulate temporal flow according to specifications that served objectives that extended across thousands of years. The acoustic systems demonstrate evidence of interdimensional communication and transportation technologies that used specific sound frequencies to create openings between different dimensional or spatial frameworks, enabling communication and travel between different regions of spacetime that weren't connected through normal three-dimensional space. The interdimensional technologies appear to have been used to access knowledge and resources from sources that existed outside normal spacetime limitations, providing prehistoric humans with capabilities and information that originated from entities or locations that weren't accessible through conventional means.